No.
If they did, some dude was nice enough to buy them, but I was like, wow.
Oh man, that would just suck if that guy won.
Oh my God,
I
he's so
thought about
pissed.
that. I thought about that. I'm like, what if that was the winning ticket?
That might have been. But yeah, that woman was unbearable because she acted like every day was her first day.
I think I get really more annoyed with sometimes, like, not that we have to deal with this much anymore because of the pandemic, but like when we're at an event and we're giving something away, and somebody gets really pissed off at the fact that maybe we didn't dig deep enough in the box and pull out a name.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful May the 6th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charleston, dealing with this beautiful spring weather down here in the South, my allergies are kicking my butt. You know, if I feel like the Dodgers visiting Chicago, can't get away. So once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They win every day, Charleston.
They win every day. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars never stop arriving. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be looking at a still picture. Oh man, I love pausing. I don't know if I'm pausing or sneezing. The pollens are flowing in California, and there's no water to put them out, Big C, but I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced, helping veterans and their loved ones get help, Big C. How should everybody get through these pollens, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when we think about our veterans, they've been struggling long before we got COVID-19 in this country. But yet there's no vaccine on the horizon for what they suffer through, Charlton. Suicide. Over 24 veterans a day commit suicide, a very horrific number that our country has seemed to lost track of because of COVID-19 and everything else that's going on. We as a country need to think more about these great veterans, these men and women who have served our country.
Yeah.
We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but we need all Americans to come to the aid of our great veterans in this country. Give them a conversation, not just a thank you. Sometimes that's all it takes is someone to give you a friendly conversation to change your direction in life.
Sounds good. That's why we do our best. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the birthday boy, the Say Hey Kid, as well as a home run king, Barry Bonds. When you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country to help put people back to work, just like car dealerships do it. Sports teams are doing it. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. Also, I want to say a special thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. My goodness, there's so many allergies. I heard an old You know how sometimes you get those old recipes, Big C? Someone told me that if you heat up red wine, it gets rid of allergies. So I tried it at Big C. It doesn't get rid of the allergies. It just makes you fall asleep, Big C. That's not.
Well, it works real good with red meat, Charlton. Helps you digest it. Red wine, I haven't heard of it for any medicinal purposes, but it goes great with good meal.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just want to get that red wine out there so they can have an excuse to drink more of it. But it's all fair in Leavenworth, especially when it has the tannins, the good tannins, and also resveratrol with the red grapes, Big C. It's all fair in Leavenworth. You know, we talk about so many things, Big C. Whether you have an allergy or not, you still got to rise and shine. I want to say happy birthday to the Say Hey Kid, the great Willie Mays. Big C, the Say Hey Kid actually turned 90 years old today, Big C. And last I hear, he's still considered the embodiment of baseball in San Francisco. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he's the embodiment of baseball, period. One of the greatest street players of all time to play the game. 24-time All-Star, Charlton, 660 home runs. You think about him, a 302 lifetime batting average, just did it all. Spent 2 years in the military.
Yeah.
Started his career in New York, ended his career in New York, Charlton. Just a great ambassador for the game.
Yeah, you know, I think when you think about some of the great San Francisco Giants, my father's favorite player was the great Juan Marichal, Big C, but he also loved the great Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays. And the fact that they were doing their thing over, man, when I think about it, it's a shame. The great Candlestick Park has been demolished over the past couple of years over there off of the Bay, Big C, Hunters Point. And it's amazing when they started playing baseball in the beautiful ballpark that they tore down for some reason. They didn't even have a whole circular stadium. It was kind of like a baseball diamond from right field to left field, Big C, and that's when the Say Hey Kid moved in there and started doing his thing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, all baseball stadiums were built that way, Charlton. That was the reason Candlestick Park was built, to lure the Giants out of New York to come out to the West Coast and play.
Yeah.
They came along west along with the Dodgers and kept that great rivalry going on in the National League, Charlton. But when you think about Willie Mays and his accomplishments in baseball, his name says it all.
Yeah, the Say Hey Kid, that's why we honor him every show. I love the way he would rise and shine. The pitch, hit deep, back to the wall, home run! The Say Hey Kid, the great Willie Mays, Big C. Would you believe it? I feel very honored to appreciate the great Willie Mays. He's the oldest living Hall of Famer, Big C. At age 90, the man has lived through Jim Crow. He lived through a war, Big C. He came back home to the United States of America and sometimes was not appreciated for what he did as a man. When you think about him at 20 years old, he joined the New York Giants in 1951. He had a game that was so amazing that people think about it, they've never seen an athlete like him. He was graceful, he was breathtaking, had a combination of power and speed and a great defense, Big C. And when you think about in the major leagues, here's a man that we love honoring our military veterans, and I love doing that the same way we do it all the time, Big C. But a man that actually served our country and still, with Jim Crow coming back home, became one of the greatest baseball players of all time, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he was one of the greatest baseball players of all time, Charlton, when he left for military service.
Yeah.
It just interrupted a short stint in his career.
Yeah.
But when you just think about his accomplishments, there is as many highlights of Willie Mays when you look at him making tremendous plays in the outfield as you do see in him at home plate.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, when you talk about an all-around great player, he embodied all of that.
And you know, amazingly, he didn't have the benefit of Sports Center and all the highlight shows that we have now, but people would still sit on the bench. I remember talking to my dad about it, how they would always listen to the transistor radio and watch the great Say Hey Kid. My mom also loved the San Francisco Giants. And when you think about the homage given from other great players, Hall of Famer, the great Reggie Jackson, Big C, Mr. October, but it's so exciting just to watch him. People did that with the great Jim Brown. They did that with acrobatics and greatness from the great Michael Jordan. And players today, we see people like the great Steph Curry that shoot threes in his sleep, Big C, shooting threes. To watch the great Say Hey Kid warm up, to throw the ball underhanded, to make a basket catch, catching the ball, running toward the foam run fence, and looking up over his shoulder, and then snagging the ball. Could you imagine what that would have been like on the Sports Center today, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is why I don't pay attention to the Sports Center highlights. If you mentioned the way to pay attention to a game. If you watch the game through the eyes of the radio, Charlton,
Yeah.
and listen to that broadcast, you don't pay attention to the color of a player or what that player's doing. You listen to the actions of the individual
Yeah.
and how they interact with the game and their teammates, Charlton, and make the game better. Make you understand what the game is all about.
Yeah.
You can get a better understanding of the game, Charlton, listening to it on the radio than what you ever get watching it on a television set, because at that time you're going to be jaded as far as what you see instead of what's going on.
Yeah, sometimes it's best to drive down the road with your eyes open. Don't close one eye, drive with both eyes open. And you have to watch the Say Hey Kid with both eyes open. Mays was one of 3 great center fielders in New York, joining the Yankees, Big C, the sensational, the great Mickey Mantle, and Dodgers Hall of Famer, the great Duke Snider, Big C. But as Mantle once said, there's just 2 of us. And then there's the great Say Hey Kid, Willie, Big C. The great Ken Griffey Jr., he made it even more simple, Big C. He said he calls him the godfather of the center fielders. That's what the great Jr. said about the Say Hey Kid. And when you think about some of those comparisons, what Griffey would become next to Mays, Big C, a lot of these great athletes, I appreciate the fact that we pay so much homage to athletes that were around even in the 1800s, Big C. We're not just waiting for guys that did something in the last couple of years. But when I see other great Hall of Famers pay homage to the oldest living Hall of Famer, that's also a very nice thing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's about what he's been as a gentleman inside and outside of the game, Charlton. The only thing that he did in life was good things. We get so swayed by these sports highlight shows, Charlton, talking about the negativity of an athlete outside the game, that we forget about the greatness that they always have within the mountains.
Yeah, when I think about it, the great Lon Simmons, Big C, a Hall of Fame broadcaster who called the Giants games all 14 years that the Say Hey Kid played, Big C. When you think about broadcasters, they got to see everything with their eyes. They can't close an eye or they'll miss something, Big C. He once said that he was moved to tears. When you think about it, when the team moved west in 1958, the Say Hey Kid was so good that the fans expected a miracle from him every day, so he gave them that miracle every day. And when you think about it, 1958, the country was still dealing with Jim Crow, Big C. Oftentimes, people don't think about what the great Say Hey Kid had to go through outside of the ballpark, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he dealt with what every black American dealt with, Charlton, during that era. I mean, it was acceptable if you were black in America that you were never going to get equal treatment. You had to live in certain areas of a city, regardless of how big of a superstar that you were, Charlton. There was limitations in black life then as there is now.
Yeah.
But, you know, you persevere and you work through it, and you go to work every day.
Yeah, you get up and you rise and shine every day. You always got to rise and shine. Mays generally considered not only the greatest center field of all time, but the greatest baseball player of all time, Big C, the greatest of all time. And once asked, the guy by the name of Doug Rader, Big C, a 5-time Gold Glove third baseman for the Houston Astros from 1967 to 1977, and later a big league manager, was the best player they'd ever seen, they said about the Say Hey Kid. And Willie Mays, when you think about it, Hall of Famer Juan Marichal also agreed. And it's one thing when the media and the fans and people like us may say something that they love about a player, but when you get it from other Hall of Famers, it's also amazing. He was the first player to have genuine swag, and that's by Houston Astros manager and former San Francisco Giants manager, the great Dusty Baker. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, 3 of the greatest outfielders that I ever saw talking in my life actually 4 were Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Roberto Clemente, and Frank Robinson. When you put those 3 dynamic individuals together, Charlton, I mean, it was only 3 positions in the outfield.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed watching all 3 of those men play when I was younger, Charlton. They epitomized what the game of baseball was all about. They were tacticians. They were great teammates.
Yeah.
They hustled all the time. They didn't whine and cry, Charlton. They didn't miss a game because they had a hangnail.
Yeah.
They went out and played the game every day. They did not hold out waiting on a contract. They proved their worth every time they were on the field.
Yeah, it's amazing, Big C. When you think about that, for the Happy Birthday Kid, the Say Hey Kid, his 12 Gold Gloves are the most ever by a player in the 500 home run club. He retired in 1973. He was the 3rd time in all, we think about all-time homers, averaging about 33 a year, Big C. I mean, he could do all things. He could even play the piano, Big C. And when you think about what so many people said about how great he was, the great Philippe Alou said that Willie Mays was too good and he was amazing on and off the baseball diamond. I really want to say happy birthday to the Say Hey Kid. May you always rise and shine. And may all the young baseball players today realize that he didn't make the money that people are making now, Big C, but he did something that a lot of them would never do. He fought for this country. He got through Jim Crow, and he also played the game with class and dignity, and he will always be the Say Hey Kid. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, he'll just go down as the greatest center fielder of all time, Charles.
Yeah, he definitely did his thing. Happy birthday to the Say Hey Kid. Big C, you know, I know you said something that maybe even the great Say Hey Kid may have appreciated, talking about the Dodgers crying, and they were, you know, they had that walk-off loss to Milwaukee. No, it was Chicago. I mean, they've been losing to so many people, it's hard to follow who they're losing to, but I still think they're going to be fine as the dust settles. It's all fair in love and war. I want to look at Major League Baseball, the universe, the games tonight, and I hope, and I haven't seen TV today, Big C, been so busy doing other things, but I hope that Major League Baseball will honor the Say Hey Kid. You have the Houston Astros, they're at the New York Yankees. And again, thinking about the Say Hey Kid, do you think they even pay enough homage? You know, when the Giants moved out here from New York, Big C, thinking about New York and the market, about the Say Hey Kid, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they did, Charlton. That's where he ended his career. He spent the last 2 years in the Major League in New York. He went back and played for the Mets, even though he was just a shadow of his great self, Charlton. Yeah. He wanted to end his career where he began his career, and having those fans have an opportunity to cheer for him.
Yeah, we heard that, Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz. There's no place like home to Say Hey Kid. Agreed. Milwaukee at Philadelphia, Detroit at Boston, Big C. And you have the Texas Rangers at the Minnesota Twins. The New York Mets, you just talked about the Mets with the Say Hey Kid going back home, sliding into first, Big C, at St. Louis. And again, the Mets, they have everything you need. Fairly new stadium. One of the greatest pitchers, but he's on the men right now, Big C. It's like they will always be second fiddle to the New York Yankees, and for good reason, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they're the second team in town. The Yankees have been there forever. The Mets came along in the 60s, Charlton, and won a World Series right out of the gate a couple of years after their existence started.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're building. They got a new owner this year. They're going to infuse the team with some money and watch them be a challenger in 2 years.
Yeah, they'll be a challenger in 2 years. It's all fair and love and war. You have Cleveland at Kansas City, the Royals, Big C. They're the Toronto Blue Jays at the Oakland A's, the Atlanta. When you think about Atlanta, they have a solid team down south, Big C. The Atlanta Braves are at Washington. And you think about the Arizona Diamondbacks, they're at the Miami Marlins. And last I heard, nobody was bitten by one of those water moccasins, Big C.
Well, you just got to be careful where you swim down there. Don't play.
Let's see. People say they love Florida because of there's no state taxes, Big C. So they got water moccasins. They got to deal with alligators. It's always humid. The humidity is making it feel like you're always in the rain, Big C. I remember last time I was in Miami. It was for the Super Bowl down there with John Elway's last game when the Broncos beat the Falcons, Big C. I remember taking a shower, and this was right in February. I walked outside. I felt that I got sprayed by a water hose, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the main thing you got to look out for down there, Charlton, is that the mosquito is the state bird, and they will carry you away.
No wonder the Santos is a little bit crazy, if that makes sense to you. And then Tampa Bay is at the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. It's all fair and love and war. I love paying homage to the sports universe. It's all fair and love and war. Big C, you know, there's something about people and how they look at teams for Major League Baseball, about what team has the best team and who is playing the best baseball. And, you know, sometimes it's like a race. I remember watching the great Usain Bolt. That good old boy, he never really got out of the blocks fast like Carl Lewis or Ben Johnson, Big C. But oftentimes coming across the finish line, he had his hands up in the air saying we're number one or something to that effect, Big C. And I think the Dodgers are trying to copy the great strategy of Usain Bolt coming across the bait. But I want to also talk about, we just honored the great Say Hey Kid. Happy birthday, Willie Mays. There's a good old boy by the name of John Means, and he was meaning business last night. He threw a no-hitter. The Baltimore Orioles, they went up to Seattle, threw a no-hitter, and they were sleepless in Seattle, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, he was one pitch away from having a perfect game. He had a pass ball on a strikeout. The catcher let the ball go, and he threw the runner out at first base, Charlton. But he was that wild pitch away from a perfect game. I mean, not often that a pitcher gets an opportunity for that, and it was a shame to see the ball be missed by the catcher.
Yeah.
It cost him a perfect game.
Hey, maybe he was getting them back for taking his parking space. It's all fair and love and war. But you think about the Orioles left-hander John Means. He meant business already having an incredible season, and then added no-hitter to his all-star, potentially even Cy Young resume. The lefty pulled off the feet with 12 strikeouts and 0 walks against the Mariners. Now, you think about it, his no-hitter was the third of the young 2021 Major League Baseball season. First for the Orioles in 3 decades, Big C, was nearly the first Major League Baseball perfect game since 2012. Do you really think they're gonna keep considering moving the mound back another foot and a half? Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, yes, they are, Charlton. They're not moving it back a foot and a half. They only moved it back a foot. So when you think about them moving, they want to make the strike zone more, obtainable for the batters, Charlton.
Yeah.
Baseball is trying to draw fans back into the stadium. And to get the young fans, you got to score points. That's what all the other leagues are doing.
Yeah, Major League Baseball. Universe John throws the 10th perfect game in Orioles history. Baltimore has a nice ballpark at Camden Yards. They have not had a lot of success in baseball of late, Big C, but they have, at least with some pitching, a chance for people to have that feeling that things are going to get back to some sense of normalcy, if that makes sense to you. I hope he has more success throughout the year. When they say Cy Young, hey, why not him be up there with the Cy Young Award winners, Big C? It's all fair and love and war, especially when more teams have a chance to decide who's going to be the best player in the universe, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, every player has that opportunity, Charlton. Pitching is about control. And when you go out and you're dominating your opponents and you're keeping them hitless, Charlton, you're always going to be in contention for a postseason award.
Yeah. So, we just talked about the Say Hey Kid, and how the Say Hey Kid, whenever he came up to bat, a lot of players, they said that was just kind of the entree, Big C. But the hors d'oeuvres that he gave you was when he was warming up, because people kept an eye on him when he was warming up, the same way they keep an eye on Steph Curry when he's warming up. He was always good at the bat, over 500 home runs. It made almost every All-Star game when he was able to play, Big C. Went and fought for this country, went off the war and fought for the country. And now you have players that just want to touch his garment, Big C, or be like him, or wish him a happy birthday. But I want to also get Big C's thoughts. And I know you want to make fun of the defending world champion Los Angeles Dodgers and the defending world champion Los Angeles Lakers. Maybe the NFL champion will come out of the West Coast also, a Big C. But I'm still going to get into the power rankings. Just a couple of teams is my opinion. And I hope it doesn't make you throw up. In fact, I hope it makes your allergies feel a lot better. I'm still going with the Dodgers because, like Usain Bolt, could you imagine people went to a race, a 100-meter dash, and they saw Usain Bolt take off with 9 other runners, Big C, and after 30 yards, they say, or 30 meters, they say, oh my God, he's going to lose, and then he comes up and wins it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, everybody knows the way that Usain Bolt starts. It's just like Steve Williams used to run for the U.S. back in the early 70s, Charlton, and always had a hamstring problem. He was always behind at the 40, but when he got to the 90, he was always in the lead.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the Dodgers, Charlton, I don't know how you can say that they're the best team. I know for the first month of the season you were saying they were the best team, and, it was lights out, and you'd already crowned them and everything, but I think last night that they had a little tarnish put on that crown after being swept by the Cubs.
Yeah. And sometimes you just need someone to make your ego feel better. You just knew they were going to give up the win, and they had a lead going into. They had a chance to close it out with the win, but the Cubs did the best they could. You can't go there and be inhospitable when you beat the Cubs at Wrigley Field. So it was still a great game. I wish that more games came right down to the final batter, but I still like the Dodgers. They're kind of got to get on the mend. And when you're riding high, it's like Alabama. I think there's a good boy down at Texas A&M, Fisher, said he's going to beat Alabama. Everybody sounds taller on the radio until you get on the floor with them, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Jimbo Fisher was a former assistant of Nick Saban, and
Yeah.
just like all the other assistants, Charlton,
Yeah.
they're 0-23 versus Nick Saban. So,
Yeah.
you can talk the talk, but you can't walk the walk once you get out there on the grass, just like the Dodgers are doing right now. I think they've lost 13 of their last 15 games, so that's a long stride from being the best team in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, well, just like Usain Bolt, you got to wait till the finish line. They're still going to be in this swing of things. They are a little bit limping right now. Also, San Diego Padres. I mean, I don't really look at I mean, again, it's early like Usain Bolt, but I think about the Padres. They have a most recent injury scare. When you think about their center, it's Danielson Lamet, Big C, in a tight right forearm, and that's what I think about people saying we want to move the mound back a little bit more. I just want to make sure that people keep that tradition that we had when the Say Hey Kid was doing his thing. Also, the Boston Red Sox, Big C. I'm glad that Boston is playing good baseball again. So many times they struggled recently. I remember being back at the World Series when they were there and had the chance to beat the Yankees in the ALCS, Big C, and they went on to the World Series and they beat St. Louis. That was a great year for Boston. This is not that same Boston team, but they are trying to climb back on the mound, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you, like many other young people, don't realize what was going on in baseball when the Say Hey Kid was playing. They did make an adjustment in the mound during his era because of Bob Gibson.
The great Bob Gibson.
They lowered the mound, Charlton, to give batters a better opportunity to hit the pitchers.
Yeah.
So they've always made these adjustments in baseball, and it happened during Willie Mays' career. So, I mean, you got to understand the game.
Yeah, they're always going to make some changes, Big C. They want to tighten the ball. They want to take the corks out of the bat. So you're going to knock out the home runs if you take the corks out of the bat. It's all fair and level war. The Oakland Athletics, they're also doing their thing in the Bay Area. Honor the Say Hey Kid. They're coming in at number 4. And as life would have it, Big C, on Say Hey Kid's birthday, the great Willie Mays, San Francisco coming in number 5 in Big C's in the Power 5. When you think about the Giants starting rotation pieced together on the fly, by far the best in the sport. Their offense is being carried by the great Buster Posey, Evan Longoria, and former All-Stars considered to be well past their primes, and a roster that ranks among the sport's oldest and has provided some of the game's best defense this season. And yeah, the Say Hey Kid is happy about that. The 2021 Giants right now, they're a little bit, I mean, I'm not going to say they're going to win the World Series, but they are going to challenge the Dodgers and the Padres and all the National League. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, everybody's challenging everybody. When you look at the packing right now, Charlton, as far as the top teams in baseball, everybody's within 2 games of each other.
Yeah.
And you don't get any separation in baseball until you get to that 100-game mark.
Yeah.
I mean, when they put out the power rankings right now at this point of the year are meaningless. When you had the Dodgers and they were beating everybody the first 2 weeks of the season, now they can't even find their way into the parking lot, Charlton, because they know they're going to lose. They don't even want to go to the game.
Well,
so, I mean, you talk about things have to air themselves out as things go along. You say they're going to get better. You know, time will tell. And once we get to that 100-game mark, we will see if they're the best team in baseball.
Yeah, they will be. The last 8 years a National League West champion. They've been the World Series. There's more time than you can count, Big C. And it's consecutively. I think about the Dodgers. They're going to be okay. It's all fair and level war, and they have the pitching and the hitting to go along with it. Number 6, St. Louis Cardinals. Always great when the St. Louis Cardinals are playing well in baseball. And then one of your favorite friends that you go fishing with, you know, you got to be careful if you go fishing with them again, the great Chicago White Sox, Big C. And they have, you know, they one time was always considered the second city, or the second team in the second city. Chicago known as the second city to New York, Big C. And also the White Sox have always been the second team compared to the Cubs, but that good old boy is doing some things back there for the White Sox. Well, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Tony La Russa, you know, I think, you know, he might have missed his AA meeting, Charlton, because he made a mishap in exchanging players on the mound, Charlton, not knowing who he could put in and out of the lineup when he was adjusting players, and it cost the White Sox a victory last night. So I think he's going to have to need to go to another AA meeting and get things straightened out.
Well, we all need AA meetings at time and Big C. It's all fair and level war for anybody dealing with AA. Also, the New York Yankees coming in at number 8. And when the Yankees win, all fair and level war, especially in New York. And then following that, you have the Houston Astros. And they had a chance to shut the crowd up just for a moment when they would play the New York Yankees. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's what Altuve went out there, Charlton. He hit a birthday home run against the Yankees,
Yep.
silenced the crowd, and got a victory for the Astros.
Yeah, and last I heard, the pitch hit deep. Right field home run. I hear he recorded the ball going over the fence just so he could have it as a souvenir for himself. He recorded his own home run going over the fence. It's all fair and level war. The Milwaukee Brewers will round out the number 10 spot for the power rankings. We're going to take what's called the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. And when we come back, I'm going to talk more about what's going on in the world of baseball. Also, I want to talk about some college football and maybe some of the best college football running backs that have ever run around, especially in the Coliseum, Big C. We'll take the Big C pause. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow Big C Sports on. I really do appreciate that. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. And I really do appreciate you'll see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Tonight, on the Say Hey Kid's birthday, I know the Say Hey Kid likes basketball, Big C, Steph, especially watching the great Steph Curry. It's a bird, it's a plane, no, it's just Steph Curry for 3, if that makes sense to you. Tonight's NBA schedule, Thursday, May 6th, Chicago Bulls at Charlotte, Big C. Brooklyn is at Dallas. You have Durant, you have Kyrie Irving, and you have the great Luka Doncic. I don't know who's going to win this game, but it should be some fabulous shooting, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you'll have Doncic, doing a little crying, Charlton, but he most likely will knock down a late 3 to have the Nets limping out of Dallas.
Well, it's all fair and level war. Be careful for those oil spots that they put down there. Like they say in Texas, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. It's not always sweat that makes people sweat. They see Washington at Toronto. They have the great Beal and Westbrook taking their act to the Toronto Raptors, Big C. Now, will the Wizards outsmart a Raptor, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the thing about Toronto, Charlton, they've never had a home court advantage this year because they've had to play the entire season here in the U.S. But the Wizards they're on a hot streak right now, Charlton. It's Westbrook and Beal.
Yeah.
They'll be knocking them down from 3.
They'll be knocking them down. Memphis at Detroit. The Atlanta Hawks they told Phoenix it's a little bit too hot in here. They turned the AC up on the Phoenix Suns last night. They're at Indiana today, Big C. OKC is at Golden State. The LA Lakers at the LA Clippers. It's the battle for LA, maybe even a preview of the Western Conference Championship, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I doubt it's a preview of the Western Conference Championship, Charlton. Only one of those teams will have a chance to get that far.
Yeah, well, we'll see, Big C. There's a lot of people, you can't count out the king. The king is the king for a reason. All he has to do is get healthy and get some calls from referees, Big C. But when I look at Big C's, the NBA power rankings, we're coming right down to the wire for the playoff run. And I love the play-in. I know a lot of players, they don't like it. If you don't like it, just fake you pull a hamstring. Like some players may be faking that they pull the hamstring. But I like the play-in because it makes teams feel like they have a chance. And when the teams feel they have a chance, it's like Dumb and Dumber. She said she liked them 1%, and he said, so you say I have a chance. And when you have a chance, that's all you can ask for as a team or as an athlete, Big C. The Phoenix Suns, they had that chance to go into the Dirty Birds down south, Big C. And I think Atlanta turned up the AC on the Suns, Big C, of all things, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the Hawks have been soaring as of late. They got that playoff itch going on down there in Atlanta, so they plan on being in there. They have the players that can match up there with the Suns. So who's the best team in the West? Is it the Suns or the Lakers?
When the Suns climb to the top, the sun goes down also, so sometimes they decide they don't want to be too shining, too bright, Big C, and sometimes they'll come back down to earth, if that makes sense to you. I hope the sun never comes down to earth, but sometimes the Phoenix Suns do. And then if you look at a team that might be challenging them also in the Western Conference, Big C, and who knows, because it's a night-by-night game. People say it's a make-or-miss game. It's also a night-by-night game depending on who's the best team. And give me a feeling on the Utah Jazz. They love hanging out around the top of the Wasatch Mountains, Big C, coming in at Big C's number 2 in the NBA basketball universe, Big C. Your thoughts?
I've liked the Utah Jazz all year long, Charlton. It's a team that's been relatively healthy. They play great defense. They got a lot of length. And, in the playoffs, you got to play defense.
Yeah.
And they got the bodies that they can do that with.
Yeah, they got the bodies to do that with, Big C. When you think about another body, it's like the big man there's room for the big man. I know a lot of big guys, and sometimes they can't find their suits, so they got to have all their suits custom made, Big C. There's a big man in Philadelphia. He loves eating the Big C burger. It's a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meats, and it's a lot better than that Philly cheesesteak. It also goes great with the Budweiser Zero. The Philadelphia 76ers, they have just what the doctor ordered, but they too sometimes are a little bit unstable in the top spot, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that will always have a tearjerker at some point, Charlton. If Embiid doesn't get his way, will he cry his way off the court?
He's going to cry his way to the bank, Big C. He's going to cry. Look at all that money I got in my bank account. That's the only crying he's been doing. And then another guy, and he's not going to share his chicken nuggets with you, but the Denver Nuggets, Big C. I think they'll be like fool's gold, those Nuggets, Big C. But they come in at number 4 in the power rankings. I don't think they have enough stamina to get across the finish line, but they are looking good right now, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they got the league's MVP on the roster this year, Charlton. Who knows how far they can carry him. If Michael Porter can get hot in the playoffs, they're going to cause waves in the West.
Yeah, they'll cause some waves in the West, but most likely in the Rockies, Big C. And then the number 5 team that's been beating up everybody, when you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, they had a close nail-biter holding on for a finish and beating the Washington Wizards last night, Big C. We know they had back-to-back beatdown. I won't say beatdowns, but good games against the Brooklyn Nets, Big C. A lot of people's favorite team in the Eastern Conference, but there's something about those Bucks. If you're going to get a buck, you got to get it when it's not looking at you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the game is played on the court. I mean, we can look at these rankings, but the thing about it, once you get into the playoffs, everybody you play in the playoffs have winning records, and those teams that you took as days off, Charleston, beating those teams with those losing records won't count in the playoffs.
Yeah, it won't count in the playoffs. People just got to stay healthy. I love the way the NBA is shaping up. I've always loved so much about it, and I love the fact that we have so many good teams in the Eastern and Western Conference that are competing for championships. It's not like the days when the Chicago Bulls were almost everyone's favorites from start to finish, when Michael Jordan helped the Bulls win 6 championships, Big C, over an 8-year span. Now you got so many teams on the Eastern and Western Conference. No one really knows how to pick their favorite, and that's what I love about NBA basketball. But I will say something about the players that are up for MVP. And oftentimes, if you're a good player, you're going to get the calls. You're going to get the chance to go to the line, Big C. They're going to call a foul on some guys that flop, and then the big-name guy gets the chance to go to the free throw line. But when you look at players going to the free throw line, the one I trust the most, when you think about it, you got Damian Lillard. When he goes to the free throw line, he's going to get his baskets. I mean, he's going to also get some calls. They're going to say, well, that really wasn't a foul, but they're trying to make it easy on him. Shooting 92.3% from the line, Big C. And also, you look at the great Steph Curry at 91.5% from the line. When you go to Nikola Jokic, he gets a lot of foul shots. He gets a lot of fouls called against him. He only shoots 85% from the free throw line. You can't hide when you're at the free throw line, Big C. That's why I don't like him as the MVP. Yeah, he'll score points because he's going to get the call. But when he goes to the free throw line where nobody's going to touch him, Big C, he falls down. He's like the 19th leading shooter from the free throw line. And Steph Curry and Damian Lillard are right there 1 and 2, Big C. Your thoughts?
Is there a center in front of Jokic shooting from the free throw line? Because he plays the center position. Those other guys are shooting guards. You know, what you have to do to appreciate the talent of a professional athlete is listen to a game on the radio and stop watching it on TV. Don't always TiVo it. Just record it. Listen to somebody talking about the game without looking at the game, and do an ear visual of a game to understand the greatness of athletes.
Yeah, well, sometimes I do both. Have the TV on, turn it down, and listen to the radio, especially out here in the Bay Area. There's some Hall of Fame broadcasters that have been doing their things for years, Big C. But it's all fair and level war. But just keep in mind, like playground basketball, they don't call fouls when the guys play at the playground. But there is some favoritism when guys go to the line in the NBA, and that's why sometimes a player may be a scoring leader, but when he goes to the free throw line, he drops down to 19th. And if people put their TV on pause and watch it in slow motion, you'll see oftentimes those really aren't fouls. But it's all fair and love and war. And speaking of something that I love as much as ice cream, especially chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream and Rocky Road ice cream, Big C, I want to take the time to look at Big C's best top 10 college football players of all time. In fact, there might even be room for 11 because it's crowded at the top of Mount Rushmore, and everybody feels that they're the best in the universe when it comes to running the football, Big C. But when you think about who the greatest college football player is of all time at the running back position, I want to give you some thoughts, and you don't have to agree, and you probably won't, but it's all fair and love and war. Number 10, I'm going to come to a guy that maybe people don't appreciate as much as I do, the great Ron Dayne, Big C. The running back out of Wisconsin played for the Badgers during the 1996 to 1999 run. The great Ron Dayne, this 254-pound bulldozer of a running back, Big C, played well above the 220 that a lot of people like to see a running back carry, became the first NCAA player to pile up more than 7,000 career rushing yards, Big C, and he rounded out his resume with 2 Rose Bowl victories and a pile of awards, including the 1999 Heisman Trophy and also the Maxwell Award, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, when you're looking at college athletes, Chuck, you have to grade them on what they did when they were in college and not what they did after that. And when you think about Ron Dayne and his lineage up at the University of Wisconsin, you know, running up there for Barry Alvarez, Chuck, he was a one-man wrecking crew. I mean, he set every NCAA rushing record that could be set. And I think the meter's still running on him right now.
It's still running on him right now. What do you think they would be talking about the great Ron Dayne right now, Big C, if he was up for this year's NFL draft, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you know, he was a college back, Chuck, and that's what they were grading him on, being a great college back. I mean, he was a first-round draft pick of the Giants when he came out of college, but running backs have been devalued in the past decade in the NFL as far as the draft goes, and they're not always kind to taking running backs like they used to.
Yeah, that's very well said, Big C. They feel they can get them cheaper and get them late as offensive level war. The great number 9 is the great Tony Dorsett, played for the Pittsburgh, Big C, running back in 4 years at Pitt. The smooth runner named the 2016 ESPN Coaches Poll as the 10th best college football player of all time. He dodged and weaved his way to a then record 6,082 career rushing yards. He finished 4th in the 1975 Heisman Trophy vote, and he claimed the trophy himself in 1976. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, watching Tony Dorsett play at Ron Dolphins was like watching a water bug when you're out fishing. He was all over the place.
Yep.
He was a diminutive running back, Charlton, with breakaway speed. I think everybody remembers him for his 99.5-yard run in the NFL, but he did that on many occasions at the University of Pittsburgh, Charlton. He was the Panther before Dan Marino.
Yeah, the Panther before the great Dan Marino. Big C's all fair and level war. Pitt's had a lot of great players coming out of that university, Big C. Also, number 8 on the list, a player that had to share the backfield, but he had another great player blocking for him I'll talk about later. You go out to the Southern California Trojans, the Coliseum. His name is Charles White, Big C. Played at USC. A great running back. Had to be pretty good to keep the great Marcus Allen on the bench. Charles White was very good, 1976 to 1979. The Trojans running back racked up 6,245 career rushing yards. He was the engine of the 1978 team, which finished number 1 across the 1978 UPI Coaches Poll. In his 1979 senior season, he won just about every individual honor there was to win, including the Heisman Trophy and the Maxwell and Walter Camp Award. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, Charles White was just part of that great lineage of running backs that they had out there on the West Coast at USC, Charlton. I mean, if you stepped into that role that you were automatically going to be a star. John Robinson and John McKay did such a great job of building an offensive line built for running backs, Charlton.
Yep.
And Charles White did it all. He was a diminutive running back when he was there at USC. He was always known for his high-stepping a la Anthony Davis, who had played out there a few years prior to him. But he was a tremendous local hometown boy who went on and did it all at USC.
And he was one of the few runners that could, along with Mike Garrett and Sam Bam Cunningham, who could also outrun that white horse, Big C, who carried Bob Baffert. It's all fair. 11 Wars, the great USC running back. There's another great kid that came out of Southern California. Should have gone to USC, but they had more paperbacks in Texas. Number 7 on the list, the great Ricky Williams, Big C, the Texas running back. Ricky Williams sure could run. He finished his 1995 and 1997 career in Austin, Texas as college football. When you think about it, the all-time rushing leader, 6,279 yards, and everybody in Texas loved California at that time, Big C. The record would be broken a year later by the great Ron Dayne, but Williams would never be looked at as anything but dominating. 1998, He won the Heisman Trophy, the Maxwell and Player of the Year honors from the Associated Press and the Sporting News. The good boy came out of California and was more coveted than any running back in the great state of Texas. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about going to a place, Charlton, where they run the football in a dominant fashion, that's what Ricky Williams wanted to do in going down to the University of Texas. And all of his work paid off, Charlton, becoming the most dominant running back in college football in his era. As you said, Ron Dayne broke his record the following year. But he laid a trail, Charlton, for backs to chase for years to come. And Ricky Williams in college, there was not a better running back during his era.
Yeah, he ran with a lot of power. I'm trying to think, maybe Earl Campbell was kind of the same running style as Earl Campbell, but he didn't take the punishment the way the great Earl Campbell did down for Texas. Would you imagine those
the
two?
guy that was closest to him down in Texas, Charlton, would have been Cedric Benson,
Yeah.
who followed Ricky Williams down in Texas, and he was a first-round draft pick in the NFL. He did not break all of Ricky's records, but he broke the single-season rushing record in Texas.
Yeah, they had a lot of good running backs down there in Texas. You would have thought they would have had more national championships. But also, when you come out to the West Coast and you think about one of the greatest players that USC's ever had, in fact, I would say any university's ever seen play in college football, but he started his college football career at City College of San Francisco. We just honored the Say Hey kid, the great Willie Mays. Well, the great O.J. Simpson, Big C, they call him the Juice. He was a halfback at USC. Now, on the field for the Trojans from 1967 to 1968, Simpson dashed for some 3,400 yards in only 22 games, Big C. 2 Rose Bowls. He finished second in the Heisman Trophy vote in 1967, what I thought he was robbed, and won the trophy in 1968. He won the Maxwell Award once and the Walter Camp Award twice. And the Juice was a player that once he got his chest in the wind, it was touchdown Juice. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, he was more noted for being a track star, even though he was a great football player. He was part of the USC 440 relay team that set the world record during that time when he was at University of Southern California. He went on to win the Heisman Trophy, Charlton. He could have been the first player to win it twice. He finished second as a junior and won it as a senior. But his football career in college was second to none.
Yeah, it was second to none. And you think about running on the heels of guys like Mike Garrett, and then later after Juice, Sam Bam. You know, at Cunningham, Big C, you had the great Reggie Bush that a lot of people still think is one of the greatest USC running backs. I still think Marcus Allen is on that list, but the great O.J. Simpson, no one can argue that O.J. Simpson was absolutely amazing, Big C. That's why they called him the Juice. Number 5, I'm going to go down to your neck of the woods, Big C, where they have more paper bags than any college conference in the universe. It's all fair level war. But the great Bo Jackson. Bo name growing up was take out the trash and bring in some wood. The great Bo Jackson, University of Auburn running back. Bo was everything and everywhere. A center fielder on the Auburn's baseball team. Jackson was also a 4-year starter for the Tigers, Big C, whose mascot is the War Eagle on that football team. In his best year on the diamond, could you believe the great Bo Jackson batted .401? In his best year on the gridiron, in 1985, he ran for 1,786 yards, produced 17 rushing touchdowns. He won the Heisman Trophy and also a unanimous first-team All-American. Plus, Big C, the great Bo Jackson, people don't realize this, he did a lot of his weightlifting through push-ups, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that Bo Jackson split time in the backfield. He was a wishbone running back. He wasn't an eye back like a lot of those tailbacks that you've mentioned already, Charlton, so he had to split time in the backfield. But Bo was one of the most tremendous athletes that we've ever seen, period, professionally or collegiately, Charlton. He was a dominant baseball player in college, a dominant track star, as well as a football player, Charlton. As they say, Bo knows.
You know, Bo does know, and he went on to do so many things, not only as a star player on the college level, but a star player in Major League Baseball, Kansas City Royals, Big C, and also did his thing for the Los Angeles Raiders at the time. And before I get on to the number 4 player, I want to ask you something and just get your opinion. And people can say whatever they want to say. Had Bo Jackson not been injured in the playoff game, the Raiders were in the Coliseum where they've seen so many great running backs, and he was kind of tackled awkwardly. They were playing the Cincinnati Bengals at the time. I think Bo Jackson would have gone on to set more records and we would be talking about him the way we talk about Emmitt Smith or other guys that rush for 15,000 yards. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I would have to differ with you greatly on that. Bo had some highlight plays that everybody remembers about Bo's career when he was with the Raiders, Dolphins. But overall, Bo only averaged like 62 yards a game rushing in the NFL. So longevity or even dominance was not part of Bo's career, even though it was short. He had highlight plays that made everybody reminisce.
Yeah, well, that's an opinion that everybody has their own opinion. He was still a fabulous player, Big C, and I would have loved to see him play a lot longer than he did in the world of sports. At the end of the day, there's a good old boy down in Texas, and I think he was something known for the Skol, Skol brother, when he started making his TV commercials, Big C, as an NFL player for the Houston Oilers. But back at the college level, the great Earl Campbell, and I wish him nothing but the best with his trying to get around now, Big C. But the great Earl Campbell, Texas running back, a statue of Earl Campbell stands outside of a Darrell K. Royal Stadium in Texas, Big C, Memorial Stadium, and that's where the Texas powerhouse started from 1974 to 1977. In his final year, the great Earl Campbell, he won the nation's rushing title, Big C. He was the nation's scoring title and also the Heisman Trophy. And there's something about Earl that a lot of people don't appreciate, that I appreciate even more now, is he was a guy that did not like to run out of bounds. He would take on the tackle, trying to get an extra 2 or 3 yards. It may have cost him health-wise, but he was a terror coming around the corner, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he played in an era when men played football, Charlton. And to think about a running back who was bruising as Earl Campbell was, and to be identified as a rose, as a flower, Charlton, that's how dominant Earl was. You had no other way to describe him other than being the Tyler Rose. But this guy epitomized what a running back was and also representing the University of Texas.
Yeah. What do you think he thinks about that song in Texas where you have now some of the good old boy boosters with all the paper bag closets, Big C, and they're saying they don't want to get rid of that Texas, and if you don't like it, go elsewhere. I wonder how it feels to guys like Earl Campbell, Big C, and to guys like Ricky Williams and other great players that played at Texas, when you have these boosters that love you so much they give you paper bags to come down there, but when you say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we could do some things to be more socially conscious. At that time when Earl was playing, people didn't challenge anything. They did shut up and dribble, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, we didn't have social media back in that era either, Charlton, and we just changed the landscape on a lot of things. I mean, is anybody going to walk away from America because America's racist? Yeah,
nobody's going to walk away. They're just going to hide in those little tunnels. They hide in those tunnels. A lot of good old boys have been hiding in tunnels. Your friend, a lot of those good old boys do it. It's all fair and love and war, Big C. I want to take you to number 3 on the list because as a runner, he wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't even the fastest guy, but he was sure hard to grab, Big C. The great Barry Sanders, number 3 on the list, Big C. Oklahoma State Cowboys. The great Barry Sanders was a great running back who had to wait his time, Big C. In Sanders' case, he had to wait behind Thurman Thomas, who also had great success at Oklahoma State. And then he went on to the NFL, did his thing for Buffalo. At the same time, he had to wait for Thurman Thomas to get out of the way, Big C, but to move on to the NFL before he got the starting tailback job at Oklahoma State. Now, given his shot, Sanders produced an unbelievable season. When you think about what he did in 1988, Sanders rushed for 2,850 yards. He scored 37 touchdowns. I repeat, Big C, 37 touchdowns. He crossed the goal line, Big C. And when you think about that, he won the Heisman Trophy. He won the Maxwell, and forever the admiration of college football faithful. I know he walked away from NFL sooner than a lot of people thought he should have, but that's his own opinion. But no one can ever tell me they've had a better running back down at Oklahoma State, Big C. Your thoughts?
That highlight year of Barry Sanders, Charlton, with the Cowboys down at Oklahoma State is what you pay money to watch. I mean, he was the most dynamic, electrifying single-season player in the history of college football, Charlton. No one, regardless of who you would try to bring onto a list, could ever say they had a better single season than Barry Sanders.
Yeah, the great Barry Sanders, he was really doing his thing. It's all fair and love and war. Also, number 2 on the list, I think about how great this university has been over all the years. The great Woody Hayes, a Buckeye, is a nut, Big C. But the Buckeye fans, they were all nuts about the great Archie Griffin, number 2 on the list, Big C's top 10 college football running backs. As a junior at Ohio State in 1974, the great Archie Griffin rushed for 1,577 yards. He won the Heisman Trophy. As a senior, he rushed for 1,450 yards, won the Heisman Trophy again. Griffin was the first and still only two-time Heisman Trophy winner, Big C. For a good measure, he was a Heisman finalist in his sophomore year. He also further bolstered his resume with 2 Walter Camp wins and also the great Maxwell Award. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, when you think about Archie running up at the Big Ten, Charlton, there's been so many great backs in that conference, and even at that university, there's been a wealth of great running backs that have played there since Archie Griffin has and probably had better statistical numbers.
Yeah.
But at the time in the era that Archie Griffin played in, Charlton, he was the dominant workhorse for the Buckeyes and Woody Hayes.
Yeah, he was a great player, Big C. And one thing I love about him as a Buckeye, that was a team you knew, unlike now where they got quarterbacks that are drafted first in the NFL draft. They were a run-heavy team, so you knew he was running towards you. It was just a hard time trying to get him to the ground, and it's all fair and level war. I want to take it to number 1 on the list, and maybe 1.5. Out of the SEC, the great Herschel Walker, running back out of Georgia, whose nickname, from what I understand, was Get Wood, and he also did a lot of push-ups to get bigger, stronger, and faster. On our list, we've run through a lot of great players, but there's only one Herschel Walker, and some of the greats dominated for a season or two, but Walker crushed it for 3, Big C, and that's why he's number 1 in many people's eyes. A bulldog among bulldogs, Walker never rushed for fewer than 1,616 yards in a season, and was a unanimous first-team All-America selection from 1980 to 1982. Along the way, Big C, he actually won a Heisman Trophy. He won a Maxwell Award, but his greatest accomplishment, it might have been helping lead Georgia to an undefeated season in 1980 and a national championship game. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, you can parallel any running back on that list, any player on that list, Charlton. But when you talk about Herschel Walker's accomplishments, never rushing for less than 16 yards in a single season, and he did this consistently over a 3-year span.
Yeah.
Other backs, as they say, do it for 1, maybe 2 years. He did it for 3, and he did not even play his senior year in college, Charlton. If you look at his numbers, and I believe that Herschel Walker rushed for some 5,800 yards in his 3-year career there at the University of Georgia. If he had played 4 years, Charlton, he would have pushed that well over 7,000 yards, and Ron Dane would not even have came close. He and Ricky Williams, Charlton, those numbers would have never gotten close to. So when you look at what Herschel Walker did in college, there's not another running back. You can go fishing, but you can't find another running back better than Herschel Walker on the collegiate level.
Yeah, he did his thing. I want to bring out some of the USC greatness, and hopefully Clay Helton, since they gave him another chance for a reason to coach the USC Trojans, Big C, hopefully he can get some paper bags to hand out to some of the crews, just as a nice way of saying thank you. A lot of people do that when they have parties for young people. They give out paper bags, Big C. Who knows what's inside of that paper bag? But I always want to just acknowledge the great Marcus Allen from 1978 to 1981. When I think about what Marcus Allen did, Big C, when he was a freshman at USC, this good old boy averaged 5.5 yards per carry as a freshman. As a sophomore, averaged 5.7. As a junior, averaged 4.4. And as a senior, averaged 5.6, Big C. But even more amazing than that is the great Marcus Allen. And people can say what they want to say about the great litany of USC running backs. He did a lot for the USC Trojans, also going on to play great football for the Oakland. At that time, they ended up playing down in Los Angeles. He and Al Davis didn't get along too well for whatever reason. But then when he was a class act when he went to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I always remember how great he was at USC. He rushed for 4,800 yards in his career, but his junior and senior season, he had 1,500 yards, 1,563, and as a senior rushed for 2,427 yards for USC, scored 14 touchdowns as a junior and 22 as a senior. So his first 2 years, he really didn't play that much. He was mostly blocking, and that's why I love adding him to that list of great players. It's all fair and level war. Everybody has.
Well, I'll go a step further. If you look at the 2 greatest rushing running backs on the West Coast, their name is Marshall Faulk and Rashad Penny out of San Diego State University. Both of those backs out there rushed for well over 6,000 yards when they were running. Matter of fact, Rashad Penny broke Ron Dane's record, as far as overall yards on the ground.
Yeah.
Ron Dane had total yards, but Rashad Penny led the NCAA in total yards when he left college. So you can't miss those guys out there in Southern California down in San Diego.
Yeah, the great Marshall Faulk. How'd they let him get out of Louisiana? They're not on a paperback floating around in San Diego State, Big C, you thought?
Well, they had the beach, they had cash on top of the table along with some fish.
Yeah, the fish always is a way. That's the closer, bringing the guy with the paperback full of fish. That's what they got to get right in California. Stop giving them paperback full of fish and give them paperback full of money. That's how you get more TV coverage. It's all fair and level war. I want to pay homage to African American history, Big C. Madam Walker, they call her the first black American woman to be a self-made millionaire, known as Madam C.J. Walker, the first black millionaire in America, invented the world's first hair straightening formula. At the same time, I shave all the hair off my head, so I don't know how that would have done me a lot of good. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, I mean, I don't have much hair to talk about, y'all. It's not going to help me.
Yeah, not going to help you at all. Also, Cory Booker, the first black senator in 1870. The senator's power in the Civil War had to settle a fundamental question. When it came to seating him or rebels, Big C, the first black senator-elect, was it too soon, according to the Constitution, for an African-American man to be legally entitled to serve? The answer is never too soon to do the right thing. I want to say happy birthday to the Say Hey Kid. 90 years old is a blessed life. And the fact that you had so many people over the years to be able to say thank you, not just as an athlete, but thank you for your service, as we always pay homage to our military veterans, Big C. I want to also, the great Willie Mays, military veteran. But there's one more thing I want to close with today, Big C. NFL football. Universe. When you think about it, Hall of Fame creates a behavioral program for players, families, a lot like the Veterans Crisis Hotline. You always say that more people should pay attention to how we can help veterans deal with whatever issues they're going through. Now you also have the NFL Hall of Fame, Big C. They're doing the same thing, and I'm not going to say it's because of what you've been doing, paying homage to the Veterans Crisis Hotline for veterans and their families, but I love the fact that Pro Football Hall of Fame creates a behavioral health program for players that are actually dealing with issues, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, many veterans, Charlton, deal with PTSD just like in the military, Charlton, because of the brain trauma from those early years in the NFL. And it's something that the league has always should have been paying attention to, Charlton, but the league for years held out on brain damage, said it was not a part of the game. But it's glad that they're finally recognizing it.
Yeah, they really are. The program announced Thursday, Canton, Ohio, supported by such Hall of Fame members: the great Ronnie Lott out of USC, Brian Dawkins, Steve Atwater, Andre Reed, Tim Brown, and current players Adrian Peterson and Calais Campbell, Big C, also David Baker, the president of the Hall of Fame. So I really appreciate that the NFL universe is doing what they can to take care of players on and off the field. It's all fair and level war. Happy birthday, Willie Mays. May you always rise and shine. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble, with all you've got to use. How can you lose, Big C? What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I want to let the Dodgers know not to worry. They do got one cheerleader out there in Charlton, and he'll always be rooting for him, win or lose. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, the doctors, and first responders. As the Dodgers get more blisters on their backside, they got bandages to take care of.
And I want to say, the great Nikolai Jokic, you have a fan in Big C. Wherever you go, he'll be following you to give you that pat on the back, even though you're not going to pat him back. It's all fair and level war. When you rise and shine, you can rise and shine every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, where you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.